Oh, we appreciate you staying with us here on Morning Live. Let's get to our next interview. Now, Parliament has been given another month to finalise the Electoral Amendment Bill. The bill was supposed to be on the statute books by the end of this month. However, the Constitutional Court has granted Parliament another extension, an extension that Parliament sought on an urgent basis in December to now complete the process by the 28th of February 2023. Now, the new piece of legislation will allow for independent candidates to contest national and provincial elections. So to talk to us more about these latest developments, we are joined by Matshepiso Finca, who is the spokesperson for the New Nation movement. Matshepiso, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to the audience. Thank you for having me.
Let me first gauge your reaction to yet another postponement on the finalization of the bill.
Well, we continue to not be surprised by the request for the extension, logically because Parliament had actually lodged that application for an extension in December, as you know, and Parliament is in recess for most of December and January. And so the end of this month was not going to work in any event. We are not surprised, and fundamentally because we expected these delay tactics that Parliament has been playing, really, since the ruling was passed by the Constitutional Court, penned by Justice Madlanga all the way back in June 2020. And Parliament only got cracking on it at the beginning of 2022 with all manner of excuses. But these delay tactics are deliberate. They are created to create, they are there to create an illusion of a sense of urgency to push through the minimal and completely unacceptable amendments that Parliament has forwarded so far in order to push through the 2024 election so that they can go ahead under the current dispensation with a promise to do a proper job beyond 2024.
Matshepiso, with the work done so far, are you confident that Parliament has in fact addressed the concerns that were raised by the Apex Court?
Absolutely not. Parliament was tasked to in fact, look at electoral reform holistically, not just to make minor tweaks to the current electoral system. The Constitutional Court, in fact, was deliberate to not be prescriptive on the kind of electoral model that Parliament should have considered. But ultimately, that model was supposed to ensure that there is an inclusion of a constituency-based system in our electoral system besides the party political proportional representative system. Unfortunately, this whole debate, this whole issue has been turned into an issue of independent candidates. And unfortunately, even the media has been kind of party to that narrative. Independent candidates inevitably were included in the judgment as amongst the form of public representative that should be able to make representation on behalf of their constituencies if elected. But it was more holistic. We cannot speak about this Electoral Amendment Bill having been finalized until it holistically speaks to an electoral model that is reformed, that is different to what we have currently. Because what we have currently, as I've said on numerous occasions, is a PR system, a pure PR system that has basically enslaved the citizens of this country and make them beholden to the political parties, not enabling ordinary citizens and leaders in their various communities and constituencies to be able to represent their communities, which they serve in and lead in anyway, without being members of political parties. And we all know how ultimately even those party lists become a very close matter that does not invite the broader electorate and the citizens of this country that elect them. Not only that, membership to political parties has its own trappings of party political agendas, position, contestations, etc., etc. And worse still, it becomes almost an impediment to true accountability to the constituency, because ultimately, even with our biggest rallies and demonstrations, we cannot hold our leaders to account. As it stands, our country is plunged into darkness, literally, and a lot of that reality can be laid at the feet of poor governance, and it's a fact. We are not politicking in saying that. It is a reality. Yet we cannot hold our leaders accountable. We have no say in which representatives sit on those benches in parliament to represent us. Once we cast our vote for a political party, it's out of our hands. It becomes a matter of party politics to the exclusion of citizens' direct access.
So all of this, of course, was meant to have been a game changer if the necessary amendments were made to the Act for the 2024 elections, Matshepiso. But then, of course, this was in 2020 when the Apex Court ruled that the Act as it was unconstitutional. The Parliament was given until, I think, 2022 to actually finalise, make sure that it was brought in line with the constitutional provisions. Then we had extension after extension to the one where we are now. And we are already in 2023. So given that from 2020 up until the elections next year in 2024 would have been a 4-year period in which to address all of the shortcomings that the Constitutional Court basically outlined, it seems by the look of things that, and according to what you've just told us, Parliament is not going to meet the deadline to ensure that all the provisions that you talk about will be included in that amendment bill. Am I correct in saying that? And if so, what then? Are you going to go back to the ConCourt? And how is this going to impact on the elections next year?
You are spot on. In fact, the IEC itself has intimated that with the ongoing delays, there's a strong likelihood that the final amendment bill that would then be ratified by the president would not be ready on time for them, as they say, to prepare for the national elections and provincial elections, even though they have staged elections with fairly short notice. But nevertheless, the issue here becomes, Akina, that we cannot afford to wait for the legislative amendments to be effected as they should. It was clear from the beginning, and all parties seemingly were in unison, with the exception of one or two small parties which raised concern with the process and ultimately the draft bill that emerged, that the National Assembly and the NCOP signed off on, the letter signing off on it with amendments. But the fact is, it is likely to not be a bill that is true not only to the constitutional master that it's meant to live up to, but also it will truly not begin to give expression to what the Constitutional Court had mandated to it, which is a form of delinquency, actually, on the part of Parliament. But given that as it may be, there's really no point at this time, at this short notice, to argue about the merits and the demerits of the extensions and whether Parliament would be ready or not. We want to appeal as the New Nation movement to communities, to leaders in communities who have been serving. We cannot afford to wait for the legislative amendments to be effected as they should in order to mobilize ourselves as communities and ensure that we get the selfless, ethical, and competent leaders with a proven track record of serving in their communities, who are accountable directly to their communities and constituencies, to be elected as their representatives. So ultimately, that drawing board, what that looks like, Sakina, is for communities going back, mobilizing themselves and their constituencies, organizing themselves in order to be able to put forward their candidates of choice, their ethical leaders of choice forward, potentially to stand even in the upcoming elections, even though the Electoral Amendment Bill process has been quite a sham, to say the least.
So, as you say, Matshepiso, the IEC have already indicated that this could pose a challenge for them in terms of their preparations for next year's general election. But at this stage, given how things are playing out, as the New Nation movement, would you be challenging this bill once it is actually signed into law, given where it's at and the fact that we don't expect much to change between now and then?
We have a responsibility and a duty as ordinary citizens who took up this case with others, with partners, members of the First Nation movement and the other parties, that took this case to court all those years ago. We have a duty and a responsibility. If, as you say, as expected, this the Electoral Amendment Bill that emerges does not meet the constitutional muster and continues to be a betrayal to the people of this country in affording them the opportunity to elect their own leaders, which we are in dire need of at this point in time. Inevitably, we have to take whatever emerges back to the Constitutional Court, and it would not just be us. The Independent Candidates Association, for one, also fielded their opposition and concern, together with several NGOs who, from the very first draft that emerged from the National Assembly, penned their concerns, submitted petitions to Parliament. Still petitioning and appealing to them as our leaders to say, can you do credence to this very critical and important development and milestone in our country? They are playing delay tactics. Electoral reform is inevitable. It will happen in this country. But unfortunately, they're playing a dangerous game, which now will inevitably even compromise the upcoming elections, which, as far as they are concerned, should continue under the current dispensation, defying an order of the Constitutional Court.
Well, we're going to leave it there for the time being because not too long now. And of course, I'm sure we will be in conversation again. Matshepiso Finca helping us unpack the Constitutional Court granting Parliament another extension. She's the spokesperson of the New Nation movement. And of course, we're going to keep an eye on this one because all things being considered, this could be an impediment. It could pose an impediment to the actual general election taking place as proposed as per the electoral timeline next year.